Are you a somatic therapist who's familiar with Alan Watts? Maybe you listened to him on the radio in years gone by, or you're one of the millions of viewers on the Alan Watts Organization's YouTube channel. Watts is a man whose influence continues to grow even decades after his passing. He was a British philosopher, writer, and speaker who became widely known for bringing Eastern philosophy like Zen Buddhism, Taoism, and Hindu philosophies to a Western audience. His ideas resonate in a world that's still trying to understand what it means to truly live in the moment. If we haven't met before, I'm Dr. Richard Dongard, and I spent most of the 1980s and 1990s driving along in my car listening to late-night radio replays of his lectures. His influence has been profound on my way of thinking. Now, why is this important for us, especially those of us who provide forms of experiential somatic therapy? Why would we care about the work of Alan Watts? His exploration of the mind-body connection is profoundly relevant to what we do. While Watts wasn't a therapist, his philosophical ideas align deeply with the core of somatic work, particularly his focus on being fully present and recognizing the interconnectedness of all things. He often spoke about how the mind and body are not separate, but are part of one continuous experience, something we as somatic practitioners understand deeply. We know that trauma lives not just in the mind, but in the body. Watts' insight gives us a philosophical lens through which we can explore the deeper meaning of this embodied healing. Watts was also very aware of the limitations of language, and he didn't shy away from that paradox. He once famously said, "If we are to talk about Zen, we will sit together in silence, for that is the real way to understand it." He understood that words, talk therapy, can only point towards the truth. They don't fully capture it. And this is why his teachings are so relevant to our work in somatic therapy. Just as Watts knew the limitations of intellectualizing these deep truths, we know that healing trauma doesn't come solely through talking. It's about the body processing and releasing what's stored within. In both his philosophy and our therapeutic practices, it's not about forcing understanding, but about allowing experience to unfold. Finally, I love that Watts called himself a philosophical entertainer. He had no desire to be a guru or tell people how they should live. He said his lectures were like the way birds sing. They don't sing to achieve anything, they sing because it's their nature. This idea is something I carry with me into my practice. Healing isn't something we can force or dictate. It's something we allow, something we flow. Watts' playful and non-prescriptive approach to life is a powerful reminder that we as therapists are here to guide, to hold space, but never to control the process. The real healing happens in the present moment, just like life itself. As I explore here the intersection between Alan Watts' idea and experiential somatic therapy, I want you to keep one principle in mind. The body is not separate from the mind. In fact, the body is not separate from anything. As Watts once said, "You do not come into this world, you come out of it. Like a wave from the ocean, you are no stranger here." This is essential both to his philosophy and to understanding how we process and release trauma. Trauma doesn't exist purely in the mind, nor does healing. Both happen in the body, in the flow of energy that connects us to everything else. Let's start by addressing the core issues with trauma. It disconnects us from the present moment. Watts constantly emphasized the importance of being here right now. He said, "You can't live at all unless you can live fully now." But trauma pulls us out of the present. It traps us in the past in a moment where something overwhelming happened and we couldn't process it fully. In a sense, we become stuck in time. In experiential somatic therapy, one of the first steps is to help the individual return to the present. How do we do this? Through the body. You see, trauma is often held in the body as physical tension and incomplete survival responses that we're never allowed to finish. The flight, fight, or freeze responses get stuck, and that energy lingers, creating symptoms like anxiety, hypervigilance, even chronic pain. Watts gives us a useful metaphor. The more a thing tends to be permanent, the more it tends to be lifeless. Trauma makes the body rigid and lifeless, stuck in a state of survival that should have been temporary. In therapy, we help clients notice what's happening in their bodies, gently guiding them to feel the sensations they've been avoiding. This is what we call interoception, and it's about becoming aware of the body's internal signals. Watts was always talking about paying attention to the present, not with your mind, but with your whole being. He said, stop measuring days by degree of productivity and start experiencing them by degree of presence. When we're traumatized, we lose that presence. And the goal of somatic work is to gently guide the body and mind back into it. One of the most profound ideas in experiential somatic therapy is that the body holds on to incomplete survival responses. Imagine this, you're walking down the street, suddenly a car swerves towards you, your body prepares to leap out of the way, your muscles tense, adrenaline floods your system, but for whatever reason you're frozen in place. The car swerves back just in time, but your body doesn't know that. It's still ready to act. That tension, that incomplete action, it stays with you. Now, Watts might say, the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, to move with it, and to join the dance. This is exactly what happens when the body processes trauma. The body needs to complete its dance, to move with the energy that was trapped. In therapy, we call this discharge, and it's the process for allowing that trapped energy to move and release. Watts had a profound understanding of this. He said, a rigid bridge will be blown down by the first hurricane. Trauma makes the body rigid, but the body wants to move, to flow, like the dance that Watts spoke about. In an experiential somatic therapy session, we might see a client begin to tremble or shake as the body releases that stored energy. Watts would understand this as part of the natural flow of life. He once said, you hear the sound of water, and that's as important as anything I've got to say. In the same way, the sensations of the body, the trembling, the heat, the release, are as important as the narrative we tell ourselves about trauma. The body knows what it needs to do. Our job is to get it out of its own way. Now let's talk about one of the central techniques in somatic therapy, pendulation. Pendulation refers to the natural rhythm between contractions and expansions, tensions and release that exist within all living organisms. When the body's experienced trauma, it tends to stay in a contracted state, unable to return to expansion. Watts talked about this rhythm constantly. He said, life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. In therapy, we guide people to move between states of contraction, where they feel tension or trauma, and states of relaxation or ease. This helps them complete the unfinished responses of trauma. Watts's teachings often reflect this idea of moving with the flow of life. He would say, the more you resist change, the more you are stuck in the same place. Pendulation is about embracing the natural ebb and flow of energy in the body, moving between moments of activation and calm. This process allows the body to release trauma in a way that feels safe and manageable. Imagine it like the waves of the ocean. Sometimes they crash hard against the shore, but they always recede. Watts' metaphor of the ocean perfectly illustrates this. You are not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a drop. The body works in the same way. Trauma is just one wave of the ocean of your being. Pendulation helps that wave complete its journey so that it can recede, leaving the ocean calm once more. Watts often spoke of the need to trust life, to stop trying to control every outcome. This is crucial when working with trauma. People who have experienced trauma often feel the need to control their environment in order to feel safe. But as Watts would remind us, to have faith is to trust yourself to the water. When you swim, you don't grab hold of the water because if you do, you will sink down. Instead, you relax and float. In experiential somatic therapy, we help people regain that sense of trust in their own bodies, trust in the process of healing, and trust in life itself. Trauma teaches the body that the world is dangerous and unpredictable. But through therapy, we begin to restore the body's innate ability to feel safe in the world again. Watts often emphasized the importance of letting go. No amount of anxiety makes any difference to anything that is going to happen, he said. Healing trauma requires letting go of the need to predict or control the future and allowing the body to guide us back to a place of trust and ease. One of the most profound ideas in experiential somatic therapy is that trauma interrupts the body's natural defensive processes. In a dangerous situation, the body wants to fight, flight, or freeze. But when we're unable to complete these responses, when we can't escape or fight back, the body holds onto that energy. Watts understood the importance of completing these cycles. He often spoke about how we must finish what we start in life. He said, what you are in your inmost being escapes your examination in rather the same way that you can't look directly into your own eyes without using a mirror. You can't bite your own teeth. What Watts meant is that there are parts of our experience, especially in trauma, that are beyond the reach of the conscious mind. But the body knows what it needs to do. When we allow the body to finish its defensive responses, whether shaking, running in place, or simply feeling the tension that was held, we complete the cycle and the body can return to balance. Watts' metaphor of looking into your own eyes reflects how hard it is to see this process from the outside, but it's happening deep within. In therapy, this often shows up as spontaneous movements, or sometimes a client will suddenly feel the urge to push against something, to run, or to scream. This is the body's way of completing what was left unfinished. Watts said, when you are not getting in the way of yourself, you will begin to find out all the great things that you are doing are really happening. This is what happens when we stop interfering, when we stop trying to force things. The natural process of healing will occur. Watts often emphasized the importance of approaching life with a sense of play and wonder. This is the real secret of life, to be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now, and instead of calling it work, realize it is play, he said. This is a central concept in somatic work as well. Trauma makes us rigid, afraid to explore new experiences or sensations, but healing comes when we allow ourselves to be curious about our bodies, to engage with our sensations in a way that's light, playful. In therapy, we encourage clients to adopt this sense of curiosity. When they feel a sensation in their body, maybe a tightness in the chest or trembling in the hands, we ask them to approach it with wonder. What is this? They might ask. What does it want to do? Can I follow it? Watts would say, by replacing fear of the unknown with curiosity, we open ourselves up to an infinite stream of possibility. When we approach our sensations with this mindset, we allow the body to guide us towards release and healing. One of the key principles in both Watts' philosophy and experiential somatic therapy is the idea that we are not isolated beings separate from the world. Trauma often makes us feel that way, as if we're alone in our suffering, disconnected from the flow of life. But Watts, like somatic therapists, knows that this is an illusion. He said, your skin does not separate you from the world. It's a bridge through which the external world flows into you and you flow into it. In somatic therapy, we work with this idea by helping people feel connected to their bodies and, by extension, to the world around them. When someone is in touch with their body, when they can feel their sensations without fear, they begin to feel more connected to the world. Watts would call this realization that you are the universe experiencing itself. Watts said, for there is never anything but the present, and if one cannot live there, one cannot live anywhere. Trauma traps us in the past, but the present moment is always available as a gateway to healing. In experiential somatic therapy, we help people come back to the present, to feel their bodies in the here and now. In doing so, they can begin to release what's been held back and find their way back into this flow of life. Watts' wisdom about the nature of reality, of presence in the body as an expression of the universe, aligns beautifully with the science and practice of somatic healing. When we combine these insights, we see that trauma is not something to be feared, but an invitation to return to the present, to rejoin the dance and to embrace life fully. So my friends, remember this. Life is not something happening to you. You are a part of it, as integral to the universe as a wave to the ocean. Trauma may temporarily interrupt the flow, but the current of life is always there, ready to carry you forward when you're ready to let go and trust yourself to the water. As I reflect on Watts' teachings and the incredible relevance they have to our work in experiential somatic therapy, I can't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude for the wisdom he shared with the world. His way of blending Eastern philosophy with a Western understanding of life continues to be a profound source of insight, not just for philosophical exploration, but for practical healing. He reminds us that we are not separate from the flow of life, that we're part of it, just as the body is not separate from the mind. This understanding is at the heart of what we do, helping people reconnect with their bodies, their present moment, and ultimately themselves. In my work, I strive to embrace Watts' spirit of curiosity, play, and openness. Healing, like life, is not a process we control. It's something we allow to happen, trusting the body's natural wisdom in the present moment. Just as Watts invited us to live fully and playfully, I hope to guide my clients toward a deeper connection with their own innate capacity for healing. And so I'll leave you with one of Watts' most beautiful reminders. The meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple, and yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. Let's remember that healing, like life, isn't about striving. It's about being fully present in the dance of all of it. I'm Dr. Richard Nongard. My hope is that you found this to be helpful. You can always find me at experthypnosis.com. Please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any other videos I put out. It also lets the algorithm know, hey, this is important stuff, and so show it to some other people, and that'll help them as well. Thank you for your time.